Next, and moving forward to our next segment, it's time for our next keynote session that focuses on bloggers and influencers in the digital world. And to tell us more about this, I'd like to ask Ms. Risha Singh, CEO and co-founder of Blog Chatter.
Hi, my name is Richa Singh, and I'm co-founder Blog Chatter. I'm also a mechanical engineer, and I'm also a blogger for the last 12 years. So the question that I'm hopeful to answer today is, are bloggers and influencers worth the hype? That's been quite the buzz in our industry of late, and hopefully through a lot of case studies, I can prove it to you whether they are or they are not. When we talk about bloggers and influencers, the first word that we need to understand and analyze is credibility. So the difference between a good blogger or a bad blogger is credibility. And that credibility, of course, could be the number of followers, the kind of engagement they get, or sometimes even the profile or the body of work they have created through their digital marketing channels. So if we are discussing credibility, I must prove my credibility as a subject matter expert and why I am perhaps the right person to answer this question today. So for that, I'm going to tell you a story, a rather short story, the Blog Chatter story. So like I said, somewhere in the last 12 years when I was blogging, at some point I realized that the international blogging scene, especially the West, when you look at US and UK, was a lot more evolved than the Indian blogging scenes. And I was interacting with a lot of international brands as well as blogging groups, and I thought that that conversation that they were having about content and blogging had to come back to India. So I did something very simple, which was we started a Twitter chat on blogging, social media, writing, and personal branding. And we asked everyone to use the hashtag BlogChatter. I don't think either one of us had thought at that time that this was a business idea. We just wanted to bring healthy conversations and learning to Indian blogging scene. And before we knew it, the chat had exploded. We were trending in top 10 trends in India organically, almost on a weekly basis. And we were clocking more than 1 million impressions in an hour while the chat was on. So we thought that maybe this could be a platform that needs to be created. And on 9th March 2016, we launched our website and created Blog Chatter as we know it. That very year, we created eBook Carnival, which is actually, I would say, world's only campaign that gets ebooks published as part of it. We have a review campaign as well as mentors who help our bloggers turn their thoughts into successful ebooks. And in the first year itself, we had launched 33 ebooks, which is still a world record. And this year, that number went up to 56. That very year, we also created a property called My Friend Alexa. We are India's first blogging campaign that uses Alexa Rank or associated tools. Of course, we are marketers here, so I'm sure that most of you would know that Alexa Rank is an Amazon company, and we use it to judge the popularity of a website, and bloggers extensively use it as part of the media kit. From that day till today, we have worked with over 50 brands. We've engaged more than 1,000 bloggers in paid campaigns. We built 10 unique properties for our own bloggers. And of course, as on date, we have 2.5 lakh page views on our website, which is Blog Chatter. So I hope that through this Blog Chatter story, I have been able to prove my credentials as an avid speaker for this particular discussion. So I don't know how many of you are aware about this, but a couple of months back, Pope Francis tweeted that Virgin Mary is the first influencer of God. So Pope Francis, a religious leader, used the word influencer to build his brand, which is of course Christianity, to connect with millions of young Christians everywhere and bring them into the way of God. I will get back to this particular point towards the end of my session, why Pope Francis, a religious leader, used the word influencer, which is pretty much pop culture, to connect with young Indians. Belle Delphine, how many of you know her or recognize her from any one of the Instagram channels? Probably not the right age group here. So credibility is a lot to do with storytelling. And I know as marketers for the last 5 years, we are bored to death about storytelling. We've probably gone to every single conference session, workshop, and heard about storytelling. So I'm not going to tell you what is storytelling and how is storytelling, but I'm going to tell you the impact of storytelling on credibility. Belle Delphine is a 19-year-old influencer who told such a great story and built such massive credibility for herself that she now sells vials of bath water in which she's taken a bath herself. Her followers are ready to buy vials of water in which she's already taken her bath. That's the kind of credibility the influencers and bloggers have started to bring to the table. Forget about products. They're selling their blood and sweat on Instagram today. But are all credibility stories long? Do they have to be told over a period of many years? Ralphie Waplington, a 2-year-old influencer in UK, is the youngest influencer in the world who sells baby clothes on Instagram, fashioning himself. So it is not a very long story for Ralphie Waplington to build credibility as an influencer. We are told that storytelling is a lot of words, it's a lot of voices, it's perhaps told to you through oral tradition. But what if storytelling has no words? It has no voice, nothing. World's most watched animal, the grumpy cat. Millions of people online are logging on YouTube to watch the grumpy cat fall off the chair, jump from a table, play with a bag of wool. There is absolutely no amount of words used in that storytelling. But since this is a marketing conference, and I'm sure by now some of you are thinking, what does Pope Francis have to do with my revenues, and what is Grumpy Cat going to do with my money? So let's talk about numbers and influencers. Huda Kattan. Huda Kattan was blogging her makeup regime in 2013 on YouTube and her website. She was simply sharing things that she was using and how she was using when she thought that she is going to build a makeup company. Huda Beauty was launched as a part of her extension of the blog. And the women in this room will tell you, and I guarantee they will tell you, that Huda Beauty is still one of the most expensive products that you can buy when you walk into a store, and some of the best in their line. In fact, so much so that Huda Kattan has been pegged by Forbes as world's richest self-made people. She's also one of the 100 influential women along with J.K. Rowling and, of course, Kim Kardashian. So when you talk about numbers, influencers have turned around revenues around themselves. Arianna Huffington. In 2005, she started a blog because she believed that press is no longer free. And she wanted to put on her blog her version of media and her version of journalism. And of course, Huffington Post was born. From that day in 2005 today, Arianna Huffington is one of the 100 influential people by Forbes ever. And in 2011, AOL bought Huffington Post for $315 million. When you look at influencers and bloggers as marketers, we need to look at the numbers and the revenues that they are generating through their own brand. Think of what they can do when the brands leverage this kind of channel ahead. But as an Indian, of course I have to include an Indian name as well, Lilly Singh. When Pantene decided to launch its oil replacement therapy product, they made Priyanka Chopra the face of the product. But they went ahead and made Lilly Singh the face of the product as well. And then that makes you question, were marketers at Pantene not convinced that Priyanka Chopra, a UNICEF global ambassador, a global icon, was strong enough to pull on Pantene why did they go one step ahead and ask her to share that face with Lilly Singh? And I'll go back to it, but I want to show you a metric. As per a survey by Twitter, a brand mention in a blog post by a non-celebrity blogger gets 30% more recommendation by the consumer at end. And that's a survey that they have carried out. Perhaps marketers at Pantene had realized that while Priyanka Chopra was the great face to grab headlines and PR stories, but when you're looking at conversion, you require a Lilly Singh. While Priyanka Chopra can allow them to reach to 10 million people today, Lilly Singh's 1 million people, there will be a 30% convert. And I'm sure everybody in the room right now know when I'm talking about 30%, most of us are working on percentages that are 1, 2, 3, and 5. The difference between a 1% and a 5% is that my customer will come back to me for work. That client, when you sell them 30% better conversion, no marketer is going to let that go. And that is why marketers today everywhere reach out to non-celebrities bloggers, because they need that 30% recommendation from them. In fact, just to further add to the story, my favorite Bollywood actor of all times is Shah Rukh Khan. A fan favorite in India as well as Dubai, I'm sure. Shah Rukh Khan is also the face of a mid-size car in India. Now, he looks really good while he sings with it, puts them in his movies and drives them around in concerts. But do we really believe that he drives that mid-size car on the streets of Mumbai to go and pick up his school kids, or perhaps reach airport or go to work on an average day? So the brand actually hires an army of bloggers. Bloggers who are everyday people, talking about their lives on Instagram and Twitter and YouTube, and they hand them a car and say, just showcase it into your life. And that becomes relatable. You know, I think in yesterday's session, Alok said something that I really liked. He said, what number does the brand not have? What is it that we're bringing to the table? You know, a brand as huge as the car manufacturer I'm talking about has all the insights about their customer. But what they do not have is perspective. They do not know what is happening in other industries. How is marketing being managed with other brands? And that's where we pitch in. And we tell them, or at least I do, that the average aspirational value for a millennial has changed. We are no longer bedazzled by Shah Rukh Khans of the world. We want relatable people. We want to see people who look like us, talk to us the way we would talk to a friend. And that is where the conversion happens. I will be convinced by an influencer who drives that mid-size car, and I'll say, fine, I think this looks workable. I'll upgrade my car to this. So Shah Rukh Khan's great for PR stories, but conversion happens with these people. And we'll stay on numbers. How many people actually directly work with digital campaigns here? Guys, CTR, getting back to work on Monday, I hope. So CTR is probably the worst figure that a marketer works with in the digital space, which is click-through rate. For a person who doesn't know, I'll just bring it down. If I see your ad on Facebook and I click on it, I am registered as a CTR for the brand. So the number of times that somebody sees the ad and how many people actually click on it, that's the CTR conversion here. Now, an ad placement on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and an average website gets you a CTR of 0.05% as compared to the same ad placement inside a blog post or an influencer's post, 2.01%. Now, those of you who are in digital marketing would know that this kind of jump, and it's of course correlated, if your CTR is 2%, you'll get the commensurate jump. It's massive for us as a digital marketer. And we will stay on the line of numbers very quickly. So how effective is influencer marketing? 80% of the marketers, this is a third-party survey, I'm only one of them, not involved directly, say that 80% of the people feel that influencer marketing is effective. Talking about quality of traffic, when you think about traffic that gets through these channels, are they lead conversions? Are they relevant people? Is the TG right? Are those people going to be my buyers tomorrow or day after? marketers say that 71% of them agree that yes, the quality of traffic that comes through these influencers and bloggers are effective and they are the right kind of people. Looking at the numbers that I've just taken you through, CTR, higher volume traffic. So for the same campaign, an influencer is recommending you better traffic. And of course, the right kind of audience as well. So you have quality and you have quantity. No surprise, most marketers feel that ROI in an influencer marketing is much higher than a conventional channel. In fact, I can tell you that there are conversations I have with brands where they foresee that in 5 years, 87% of their money is going to go to digital. Because some of them know that that's the space that their consumers are plying every day. And they want to be aggressive enough to reach them first before their competition does so. I think we should do some exercise, yes. So as a digital marketer, of course, I completely believe that the ROI is important when it comes to influencer marketing. And I thought I can give you a rare insight into what an influencer marketing campaign really looks like, because we do that on an average day. So I'm going to take you very quickly and as briefly as possible through one of our case studies that we did with Abbott. So Abbott Nutrition, Abbott Global is one of our major clients, and we are probably working with almost all their brands. And one of their brands is Ensure. Has anybody heard of Ensure here? Right. So all of us have. I hope you will eventually hear about it. Ensure is a nutrition product that targets 40 plus men and women. And it's obviously a dietary supplement. So Ensure reached out to us with a very simple campaign. The Singapore team, the medical team, had done research and they realized that there is a very basic test to muscle strength. How many of you are ready to do this right now? Okay, so you're sitting exactly at the right position. Now you have to put your one leg up and without any support, try getting up on the other one. Woo, fit. All right, so that means marketers do a lot of running around and there are super fit people. Now, this is a 3-second exercise that you can do. And this exercise states that if you are able to do that, you know, if you could stand up on one leg without any support, you're safe, your muscles are going to work till the age of 70. So congratulations, you guys. I'll see you back here at the age of 70. But in case you are not able to do, and in complete honesty, I wasn't able to do. So if you are not able to do, then that means that you need to get back and check your nutrition and lifestyle and perhaps put some course correction. Of course, the subtle messaging behind is that, guys, Ensure is one of the dietary supplements that you could incorporate in your diet regime. Now, this looked like a really interesting campaign to us and we started working on it. But there's always a but for a marketer's life. And when we decided to launch Ensure, 2 competitor brands launched their campaigns with similar messaging and identical value proposition. So there were actually 3 launches that were happening on similar lines, and we had to sketch a campaign that had to obviously work, be different, and cut the cacophony that digital often sees when many brands are launching at the same time. We went back, we had a discussion with the team, and we reached a consensus that we are going to take this campaign to micro-influencers. Micro-influencers, people who ply in the range of 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 followers and not Lily Singhs of the world. And we said, here's the challenge. It's a simple video. We have our research. Talk about it on your channels. Talk about it through your Instagram stories. And that's about it. And of course, there is always a call to action that if you guys feel like it, try Ensure, talk to your doctor. And the competition brands on the other side did something absolutely opposite. They went to celebrities, massive influencers like 3 million reach and 5 million reach, and said, here it is, this is our way of putting up the challenge. They had a very similar challenge, and and you go ahead and do it, and that's about it. So do you want to know what really happened when 3 brands launched at the same time? And while we took one strategy, the other took completely similar strategies, which was just talk to the celebrity influencers. we were the viral campaign for that particular industry. We were pegged by Yahoo, Daily Hunt, Quint. Everybody was talking about it. We were getting calls from other brand teams who said, we're going to hold this community exercise where the entire office is going to do this challenge and we're going to put up on our social pages. We had WhatsApp messages as forwards. People were forwarding our challenge to us, because they didn't know that we were the team behind it. And numbers. So we reached 11 million people in a span of 8 days, and we clocked 26 million impressions. And remember, we just pegged those 10 micro-influencers. We didn't shell out a lot of money. We just knew we had to get our strategy right, and we had to get the messaging right. And this is what the share of voice looks like. So we were at 58%. For a space where there are 3 brands being launched at the same time, and massive budgets being spent on the other end, this was a really, really big success for our team. Okay. So Ensure actually made us believe that there were a couple of things that we knew were going to be the next trends. We feel micro-influencers are here to stay. A lot of brands have already started taking a call, especially like banking sector, who feel that massive 1 million follower influencers are now celebrities and no longer part of the influencer marketing strategy. Because after all, influencers were about relatable human beings and not about very well photo shoots done in Turkey and on a hot water balloon. So remember when I said that Pope Francis, right in the beginning I said, he used the word influencer to connect to his, followers, Christianity, get them back in the game. I'll tell you why. 47% of the millennials today say that they cannot live without the internet. And I feel that figure is a little less because it's a very conservative survey today, right? Why wouldn't a brand want to capture that space? They want to be a part of the system where the consumers reside as well. And I'm a millennial, but of course a generation ahead of me would be, before me would be Generation Z. And they are saying, combined figure is that 72% of them, nearly 3/4 of them, are following some influencers on social media through some channel or the other. And my favorite metric is, they say millennials hate ads, but 58% of them wouldn't mind if it's from their favorite digital stars. I would like to say that what they're politely trying to tell brands everywhere is 100% of the people hate ads, but 58% of them would be okay if you just push it through your favorite star, right? I'm going to be very candid about it. I don't have TV at home. Like many other people, I'm only watching Netflix and Amazon. The only time I do watch television is when there's a Roger Federer match. And even in that match, I would pay to get the ads out of the space. I would literally do that. I would watch that green court while he's taking a break, and I'll be very happy to do that. So 58% though, and I'm one of them, would be comfortable to see that ad being pushed from one of their favorite influencers or blogger. 52% of the surveyed Gen Z and 50% of the millennial together say that they trust the message that is being put out by their bloggers and influencers. Of course, that's debatable because the credibility of influencers and blogging today is dwindling. People feel there is a lot of sponsored posts on channels, and we are trying to fight that out in our own way. At Blog Charter, we take a call that you have to become advocates of the brand and not just put out a post and wash your hands of it. But definitely, despite the fact that there is these metrics in place, 50% of the people would still say that yes, an influencer would not push out a narrative that is not correct. And of course, the big space of people wanting to become an influencer and hence following an influencer. How many of you have at one point or the other thought, I'm going to become a travel influencer and travel the world for free? How many of you? I've given it a try as well. Thank you. So all of us at one point are following these influencers because we believe, if we direct and learn ourselves through these metrics, we'll also become an influencer. And who knows, there could be a Huda Beauty version of my life as well, right? And 50% of the people of the people who say that, yes, we're following influencers to become an influencer, say we're doing it because we want to build a better cause to the world. So millennials, as you would know, and marketeers, you got to know this. Brand your campaign as a movement and you have them eating out of a plate. That's it. You know, they will not want anything but make them believe that they are buying your product for a higher cause, right? I mean, selling beach towels because 10% of our revenues will go towards saving sharks, and there is a company like that and super successful. So make them believe that they're doing it for a cause. And of course, work-life balance. We're sick and tired of going to our corporate jobs. We want to work from home. We want to have a relaxed life. And being an influencer feels like one, but believe me, it isn't. They have a very hectic schedule, and they are definitely not having any work-life balance. And 50% are there for the cash. I know influencers who are traveling the world on their own money in business class. They've reached a stage where they are not even traveling in economy because they have so much of money. So of course, there is a lot of money out there. Billions and billions of content industry is waiting for you to become an influencer. Not that easy, but there is money, so they are pretty much right that they should become an influencer for money. And of course, 84% of us have ditched print and TV advertising for digital. We are done and dusted with it. We're not interested in seeing those banal TV ads or print media. We're not going to be convinced anymore. And that brings me to the last and final point, which is millennials want to be marketed with, not to. So that's why Pope Francis said that Virgin Mary was the first influencer of God, because he thought that if I join this movement of making marketing easy for people, right? I mean, if tomorrow you get to know that your favorite friend is an influencer, you're more likely to buy the products that she is selling, right? So Virgin Mary is your favorite influencer. Buy religion, come to Vatican, meet us, and become a devout Christian. But the message that we marketers need to learn is no consumer wants to be taught, preached, or told. If you ask them what they want, if you engage them, if you perhaps suggest to them that this is a good idea, why don't you try it, you will find better results. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the floor at this point? Yeah, there's a couple over there. So let's start over here. If we can get a microphone, please. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for this insightful presentation. I have a simple question for you. With FTC imposing rules and regulations on influencers in US, what is your take on it and how it's going to affect, will it be implemented in India, and how it's going to impact the influencers?
So I think as Blog Charter, we were extremely appreciative that finally there were guidelines that we could share with our bloggers, exhaustive guidelines if you looked at FTC. And we, in letter and spirit, follow them in our campaigns. So of course, we are not legally bound by the government of India to do something like that. But when we sign our NDAs with the bloggers, when we're sending them campaigns, we ensure that FTC guidelines are included in it. We have a lot of material on our website around FTC guidelines. So in a nutshell, I would love if the government of India puts their weight behind it and gets FTC as a legally binding law in India as well. So I would mostly welcome it because I think there are a lot of honest influencers around who get clubbed with the bad ones. If FTC is in place, it will be easy for them to stand out and have their voice being heard, and then perhaps the following count will not just be the one metric that they're looking at. So I'd appreciate if it comes in India.
Thank you so much.
I just want to hop onto that point as well, and I don't know if you know that the UAE now has influencer licenses. Anyone that's taking money for posting on social media now has to have a social media license, and they have to state that it is a paid-for post, and it has to be transparent, and if they don't do that, then they get fined now.
Yeah, exactly.
We have some other questions.
Hi. So there's one thing that I have also been grappling with when it comes to influencers is that there's a question of ethics. Exactly what you said when it comes to Virgin Mary, that I would much more likely believe her than anyone else. Now, if I was an influencer and I was perpetrating, say, sugary drinks to children,
Yeah.
how do you define that code? Because even though there might be guidelines of how influencers are working as far as other aspects of their business is concerned, I do not know if there's anything as far as ethics that exists.
Okay. So we have, of course, discussed this internally as well. We work with Abbott, and Pediasure is one of their brands. And it's one of the best health drinks if you look at for children in the space. But of course, it has sugar. We cannot really say no to that fact. So we've started doing something which is that we ask our bloggers to candidly state that there is sugar in this. And of course, all the campaigns that they're doing is the basis that they're giving it to the children or experiencing it themselves. So they say, we are okay with it and we're using it in our normal life. But if you are averse to sugar or if you think your child shouldn't be having it, that's a call that you take. So I'm not saying that the industry or influencer marketing in general is pretty clean, transparent. But when you look at celebrities endorsing a lot of stuff that they shouldn't be doing it, and we've let them get away with murder, then I would still feel that the influencers are a lot more responsible. They have taken firmer stands than I would say any celebrity has done so far in the terms of marketing that they have been doing. There is a lot of scope for improvement. Of course, like you said, sugary drinks for children is something that we should put our foot down, and we have on certain cases. But maybe disclaimers can work, because we can't really dictate rules to influencers after a while, but they can obviously say that if you're against sugar, then this product is not meant for you.
May I ask her to join? Thank you. So what I'm saying is that the issue is far deeper than that, which means that ethics isn't just about sugary drinks, it is also enforced in other aspects of life. If we were to not govern this, right, now, what is the way forward as far as new influencers are concerned? When they come into the fold, they have to also work with agencies that will tell them either you can take this or you can spoil the relationship with us forever. So, and if you talk about celebrities, when I see something endorsed by a celebrity, I am skeptical. I do my own research. But whereas someone that I know and I trust is recommending something, I will most likely convert.
Yeah. So actually, I'm on your side in this, because I would say that that's where I'm not upselling Block Charter, but I would say that is where Block Charter enters. Because the reason why whatever amount of growth and success we've seen in the past few years is because brands started asking questions like you just did, right? And they were asking these questions that who will control the influencers, who will curate the content, and what if it backfires, who will take ownership of that campaign? So I think when the new influencers come in, that's how community works. A lot of older ones do mentor, they do share. And at Block Charter, I can tell you that this culture of induction, when a new influencer or blogger comes in, is very strong, and it's rather long. In fact, we have a year-long program that we ask influencers to take up with us. But the larger question will still be very gray, because there are agencies who will still pick up an Excel sheet. They will still have line items in which there are influencers' name and followers, and they will download it and then send it to the brand, and the brand will say, oh wow, I have so many followers and I'm okay with it. We hate it. We've taken it up with Twitter. We've written to Instagram. In fact, personally, when we pitch our bloggers, we make a presentation, because we don't think any person should be an Excel line item. Everybody deserves an in-depth analysis of profile. But I don't think there's any right answer from my side. I can just say that the concerns are very legitimate, and at Block Charter, we're ensuring that as much as we can fight them.
And let's just do one more quick question. I think there was another one. Yeah, the lady in the pink here.
Hi, thank you very much, firstly, for such a wonderful presentation. Just a quick question. How do you decide and choose on the influencers? Like, which ones do you think would be, of course, it depends upon the brand as well, but is there any something that you have in black and white that you decide and choose? How does it go?
I'd say a body of work, and we've been very lucky that we've had brands who have let us choose our influencers. I don't think in my 3 years of Block Charter, any brand has come back to me and said that I want this influencer, or I want this person, or I want this blogger. They've trusted us enough to understand the brief and give them the right ones. A mix of influencers. It's my opinion, of course, larger industry doesn't still agree with me that the number of followers does not count after a while. So if there is somebody who's at a 20K, 25K Instagram followers and has a decent blog rank, I'd say the content is more important now. So because we have very strong tools at our end, we market that content. But selection of bloggers today is still on the body of work that they have built in terms of the professional work they've done. The kind of content they have been churning. And yes, there is a threshold. For example, we say that an Alexa rank of 700, 800,000 is important. And only if you are at that level will we take you. Another thing that we have is we do not take any Blogspot WordPress website. So a blogger should have his or her own website for us to actually onboard them. And the third one is, of course, that you should have 2,000, 3,000 followers on Instagram. Until the brand doesn't specifically say they need better following, we completely ignore it. So I'd say that it's more on the content that they have been generating and less on the number of followers. But that's only my opinion. Trust me, the industry out there is very different. They would obviously look at followers and things like that and then work their way backwards.
Thank you. Great. Richa Singh, CEO and co-founder of Blog Chatter. Thank you so much.